important tool by which this can be achieved. Governments will not be ready to commit to their populations by providing legal entitlements that people may claim in areas such as maternity benefits, unemployment benefits, child allowances, or old age pension, unless they are assured that they will be able to fund those promises. The second idea is that international support by the establishment of a new international financing mechanism is not a substitute for domestic resource mobilization. In fact, the fund could kickstart a process by which benefiting governments, benefiting states could gradually increase the mobilization of resources in order to provide income security to their population in a life cycle perspective. And gradually, the investments in social protection floors could allow to build a healthier and better qualified workforce, stimulating economic growth by the reduction of inequalities and allowing the social protection schemes established to gradually self-finance themselves. The third idea is that this is affordable. Today, it is very striking that only $1 billion US, these are figures from 2019, from official development assistance go to social protection out of a total ODA granted by OECD countries of about $152 billion. In other terms, social protection is 0.65% of total ODA. And the International Labour Organization has calculated that the financing gap for social protection floors to cover the entire population of low-income countries, some 711 million people in 29 countries, the financing gap is only 79 billion US dollars. And that is about 60% of the total amount of ODA going to developing countries today. So it is affordable. It is not affordable for low-income countries, for least developed countries to protect all the population with basic social protection floors, but it is affordable for the international community to invest in that process and thus provide a stronger incentive for governments to protect their populations from income security. The fourth idea is that this would not lead to deprive countries from national ownership concerning how to design and expand social protection coverage for their population. In fact, the idea of the Global Fund is that the beneficiary countries should present assessment-based national dialogues that would result in action plans for the establishment of social protection floors based on a dialogue with social partners, non-governmental organizations, the international community, and of course the line ministries for each country to identify its own priorities to be supported by the international community. Fifth and finally, this does not mean we need a new big bureaucracy to deliver funds. We have many actors working on social protection in LDCs in particular, and we could build on the existing momentum and on these actors, including those that are part of the Global Partnership, USP 2030, in order to move towards action. So my message to you today is we need LDCs to invest much more in social protection to protect their population from income security and reduce inequalities. And the momentum around the Global Fund is an opportunity to be seized. This is why I welcome the fact that the latest International Labour Conference of June of this year adopted conclusions that call upon the ILO to work towards establishing a global fund for social protection. And I very much hope that LDC 5, the fifth international conference on the LDCs, will be an opportunity to make major steps towards realizing this objective. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you very much, Olivier. You know, when I think about the need for social protection schemes, and I completely agree, we do need them. But I always think about a critical question, which you have mentioned, which is affordability, especially for governments that just don't have the fiscal resources to put such things in place. So I hear what you're saying with respect to the establishment of a global fund that could, probably kickstart the process. But then you say that eventually um, social protection schemes at the national level can self-finance. Hopefully they can finance themselves. And I just wondered when I hear that, how would a country establish a social protection scheme that is self-financing? Is it through the establishment of a national investment fund, a fund that invests in various areas and makes a return and therefore is self-sustaining? Is that what you're getting at?
Mr. High Representative, that is the heart of the question, of course. The idea is that social protection is not a cost, except in purely accounting terms. It is an investment for more inclusive types of growth that reduce inequalities and allow not only to invest more in human capital, in a healthier and better qualified workforce, but also in entrepreneurs allowed to take more risks because they are provided this shield, this protection from economic insecurity. And all the studies we have show that social protection is an investment that in the midterm ends up paying for itself. The gains in terms of economic growth and the building of human capital significantly outweigh the costs after a number of years.
Okay, so when you talk about the gains in economic growth, you're then saying that the tax revenue that is collected from a growing economy would then be able to self-finance the capital outlay to provide the sort of protections you're speaking about, right?
Indeed, and to kickstart this process, we need the international community to give a signal, an indication to LDCs in particular, that this should become a political priority, particularly since these countries are often heavily indebted and cash strapped, and they need this incentives to invest in social protection. The international community would commit to do so if the country presents a credible action plan showing it can mobilize resources and identify the gaps in social protection that need to be filled in the particular country. And this, I think, is the most important priority for today and to achieve target number 1.3 of the SDGs.
Thank you, Olivier. Thanks for clarifying your ideas on that. And colleagues, now we will turn to our two discussants. I told you earlier that Tashi Choden had not been online, but she's now online. She's joined us and she'll be our first discussant virtually. And their role, the discussants, really is to give some consideration to the ideas and the remarks that we have heard so far today. Tashi Choden is the planning officer for Bhutan Gross National Happiness Commission. Excuse me. I hope you heard me. Planning officer for Bhutan's Gross National Happiness Commission. She will talk about her experience with the Gross National Happiness concept to assess progress towards achieving well-being. So Ms. Choden, you have the floor. Your virtual intervention will be for 4 minutes. You have the floor. That is, if you can hear me, you have the floor. But is that a frozen screen I'm looking at? No, it's okay. Is your microphone muted or could you check?
I apologize for the disruptions. We've been having power outages here, so there have been fluctuations in the network. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, and I hope you're happy today.
Yes.
Great. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and for organizing the Future Forum and for inviting me to share some of Bhutan's experience. Bhutan's decade has been remarkable with our gross national happiness policy and philosophy. Balanced and equitable, sustainable socioeconomic development has long been a priority for Bhutan. Equity and redistributive principles have therefore also been embedded in key legislations and policies, and also the constitution. Bhutan also recognizes the importance of looking at poverty not only as a measure of income, but also through other dimensions, and has since 2010 been using the multidimensional poverty index. The government is also
Tashi, it may be better if you
improvements in
come off
health
screen
and
and just,
education
yeah,
outcomes.
why don't you do your statement without the camera? Because there are some network glitches.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
thank you.
okay. Bhutan also recognizes the importance of looking at poverty not only as a measure of income, but through other dimensions, and has adopted the multidimensional poverty index. The government is considering increasing the thresholds for some of the related indicators. Such progress is attributed to consistent investments and improvements in health and education outcomes, expansion in rural infrastructure and network, efforts at commercializing agriculture, and targeted poverty reduction programs to root out extreme poverty, especially over the last two development plan periods. And that has been coupled with various social security interventions so that no one is left behind. However, poverty rates are highly variable across districts, indicating uneven progress, with income inequality disproportionately affecting the rural population. Building on past interventions to root out conditions leading to poverty and inequality, Bhutan's current development plan, which is in the 12th cycle, seeks to reduce inequality through multi-sectoral interventions that are expected to contribute to the achievement of the national key result area, which is reducing poverty and inequality. And a key initiative in the current development plan towards reducing income inequality within the country is the passing of the amendment of the Income Tax Act, which has important provisions that will provide towards narrowing the gap among the general public, support private sector development, and in particular, the welfare of the farmers. I agree that with regard to child nutrition, integrating food and healthcare policy for achieving improved nutrition in the long run is essential. And I believe that Bhutan's approach to achieving this SDG target has also been in a similar manner. In terms of interventions to address the nutritional concerns in the country, progress can be noted in the National Health Policy under revision and also the National Nutrition Strategy under development, both of which are expected to have a bearing on improving multi-sectoral collaboration towards more effective nutrition programs and services. More emphasis is being placed on providing nutritional meals to children as the National School Feeding Program transitions to the National School Feeding and Nutrition Program. And for that, to increase availability of fresh and nutritious food for school meals, efforts are underway to enhance the production and entrepreneurial capacity of local smallholder farmer groups and to connect farmers across the country with schools within their vicinity. The gaps, however, in ensuring sustainable agricultural productivity remain, considering it is constrained by a combination of factors, including declining cultivable land, increasing human-wildlife conflict, and farm labor shortage and increasing farming costs. The 12th Five-Year Plan also highlights investments in agriculture as a key activity for the achievement of economic diversification. We also have the National Organic Flagship Program, which is working towards commercializing organic production, at the same time mechanization and commercialization of the agriculture sector, coupled with adoption of climate-smart technologies. The challenge is that there is a lack of awareness among farmers on climate-smart agriculture technology and the associated opportunities and challenges. In the current plan, programs on development aims to formulate and farming. At the same competitive market benefiting both producers and consumers as well. Given a largely welfare state approach, even prior to the pandemic, the Bhutanese people have been protected through various social protection measures implemented in accordance with the constitutional mandates for free education and health, existing legislative provisions, and His Majesty the King's Relief Fund, which ensures that various forms of social assistance are provided. Such long-standing mechanisms in place have been instrumental in ensuring that the most vulnerable people are protected. Meanwhile, Bhutan continues to address the last-mile challenges, and with inequality becoming a growing concern across the world. However, we are still lacking in one of the most important tools, which is to do with data. To achieve, to narrow the gap, we have to use the right kind of data and should have enough data to inform the right policy decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Choden. Colleagues, the last but not least is Dr. Lawrence Haddad, who is the Executive Director of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. He's also coming to us virtually. Haddad?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Under Secretary General?
I'm good. Interested in hearing your views on things like poverty, food insecurity, malnutrition. What can we do? What can be done to remediate those problems?
Thank you, sir. I have 4 or 5 minutes, is that right?
If you're
I'm lucky, okay. I'll be lucky.
No, no. You have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so 5 minutes to close out.
Much. Thanks so much for inviting me, and I really enjoyed listening to the previous presentations. Going to Maximo's points about the house is on fire. I think you said that, Under Secretary General. I was reading an IMF report recently, which says that the IMF projects that GDP of Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, outside of China before, in 3 years' time, will still be 6 or 8% below the pre-COVID level. So this dire situation that we're in now, with record increases in hunger numbers in the last year, this is going to continue for 3 or 4 years at least. So I want to talk about hunger, and there are 4 basic causes of hunger. First is lack of income. Second is lack of food. Third is lack of peace. And fourth is a lack of voice and accountability. And I want to spend a minute on each of those if I can. So on the first one, the lack of income, I'm completely supportive of what Olivier de Schutter is saying about the floor for social protection, universal floor. But we have to go beyond that. We have to look at decent work. We have to look at equitable livelihoods. The workforce in the food system, which employs 1 to 2 billion people, is some of the most exploited workforce in any job or any sector in the world, and that includes workforces in high-income countries as well as the least developed countries. And the evidence clearly shows that improving the conditions for working people, employers doing that, it generates benefit cost ratios of 3 to 1 or even up to 6 to 1. So this is clearly in the employer's interest to improve the working conditions of workers. Also under income generation, I also want to see more inclusive access to finance for small and medium enterprises. In the least developed countries, small and medium enterprises, SMEs, are the backbone of the economic system and certainly of the food system. At the moment, they can't get the access to finance they need to take the kind of risks that Olivier was talking about. So that's income. On the food side, food generation is important for 2 reasons. One, it's generating food. And, it's often said that there's enough food to feed everybody in the world. That's true at a sort of conceptual level, but practically it's not true because the food is not produced in the right place and in the right way. So we need more food production in areas where there is less food available, but we also need food production in ways that generate income, decent income for smallholder producers. And that means public sector investment on the farm. It means public sector investment for food on the move, transporting food, storing food, making sure there's a minimum loss and waste. And it also means meeting targets. The CAADP targets in Africa, no one really likes to talk about them, but they're not being met. These are the targets for African ministries of agriculture commit to investing up to 10% of GDP, or ministers of finance commit to spending up to 10% of government expenditure on agriculture, and those targets are way off being met. And I want to stress that, you know, ending hunger, it's not as expensive as we may think. About $33 billion is spent every year on these kinds of investments. And a very important set of studies under the banner of Ceres 2030 last year showed that if we double that expenditure from 33 billion a year to 66 billion a year, we will effectively get hunger numbers down to less than 200 million by 2030. So we have an opportunity and we know what to do. It's about mobilizing the resources and aligning them behind these high impact investments. The third area is really around conflict, and I won't spend too much time on that. We know that sharply increasing food prices lead to more conflict. There's pretty clear evidence on that, and we have sharply increasing food prices at the moment, as one of our speakers said. So we can expect more conflict, and when there is more conflict, we must condemn nations that weaponize food. Food is often weaponized in conflict, and any nation that does that must be roundly condemned by the UN Security Council and other members. The fourth area is around lack of accountability and voice. As one of the former FAO Director Generals would say, there is no union or association of hungry people. They lack a voice. And one way of improving their voice is to make sure that rights violations, the right to food violations, are more clearly heard and more loudly heard. And at the moment, it's really civil and political rights violations that get heard more loudly than economic, social, or cultural rights. So I'd really like to see a lot more done in the violation of rights space, especially for right to food. Finally, I just want to say, you know, we are at a period where there are three firsts that are important for hunger. The first first is the staggering numbers that Maximo showed at the beginning. You know, I like the central variant, the one that says hunger numbers have gone from 650 million in 2019 to 768 million in 2020. That's sort of a more conservative estimate, but that's still 118 million increase, sort of a 20% increase over the 2019 numbers. That's the first time in 50 years that we've seen numbers that big in any single year. The second first really is we have a set of high impact solutions. We know what to do, and we've even got these impact investments, and Olivia is quite right to call them investments. We've got this set of impact investments costed and validated. We know that if we spend this much, we'll get this much of an impact on hunger. And really, the final first is that we can be the first generation really to talk about actually ending hunger, getting it down to below 200 million. That's not quite ending it. That's still a very big number. But as Maximo said, if we don't act now to firmly and convincingly and decisively on hunger, if we think it's expensive now, wait until 2 or 3 years time, it's going to be much, much more expensive. Back to you, Under Secretary General.
Thank you very much. Lawrence, let me follow up with something just on a conceptual level, because you actually, listening to you, I'm reminded of some of what Olivier said in his presentation. And conceptually, it's this, not a trade-off, but is something to be looked at as an investment in terms of a public investment, or is something to be looked at as a public expenditure, right? So when Olivier speaks about social protection, he doesn't look at social protection in expenditure terms. He looks at it as an investment. And similarly, when you speak about improved working conditions, you're not talking about government spending to improve working conditions. You're talking about government making an investment in improving working conditions, an investment that will yield a return a return that is going to impact the bottom line. The problem is that you mentioned employers making this sort of investment in working conditions. And the problem is that too many employers don't look at it as an investment. They look at it as something that is going to increase their cost of doing business. So we just need a fundamentally different way to look at it, I think, conceptually. Even when you talk about ending food insecurity, that we need to invest. We're spending $33 billion a year right now. It's really not an expenditure. It's the amount that we are investing, and we need to increase, double that investment to $66 billion a year. So whether it's at the employer level or whether it's at the government level, I think we need to have a